I am trying to get Marcia on today. We've been having some technical difficulties, but we will figure this out. She is in Florida. I'm in North Carolina, so it shouldn't be very difficult. But what she just explained to me is she's in a new community that's out in the woods, and they need a new cell tower over there. So we're trying to troubleshoot here and see if we can get on with each other. This is bound to be a great conversation because we had to work so hard to get it. Hang on. Okay. Thank you, IGTV. Okay. Feeling like I look a little tired. Okay. Marcia's there. Let's see if I can get her to join. Yeah, there she is. She is. Oh, this is awesome. Awesome. Marcia!
What an adventure.
It was an adventure. Oh, you look lovely. And it's so clear. Your voice, the picture, everything is clear.
Hooray.
Well,
doesn't mean that I'm not going to have family members walking right through the room, though. So we'll see how that works.
That is all right. Are you, so Marcia, I was trying to introduce you and I want to just tee it up how I met you. So first of all, we haven't met in person as yet. We have just met on the wonderful, beautiful Instagram. It's amazing during this COVID-19 time what it has allowed us to do in terms of reach and connect with other human beings that we've never met face to face.
I feel like I've known you, though. I feel like I've known you for a long time.
I know,
so that's what's important.
And I really appreciate you giving me this time this morning. I was just wanting to tee up and tell people a little bit who you are, and I have some questions I just want to springboard into. I want this just to be a time of connection and understanding and expansion, So
Great.
What I was telling people is what I saw is that you are kind of an architecture of systems and helping people to update systems as we evolve as human beings and our needs change. It seemed like this is my takeaway. You do something that you're not in first grade and you go, when I grow up, I want to do this. You don't even know that what you do exists, but clearly we need it. I want to dive into a little bit more about what it is that you do. First, tell us where you are, Marcia.
Right now, I am sitting in my laundry room. I think that's actually very important to this conversation.
Yes.
I am sitting in my laundry room in Ponte Vedra, Florida, which is just south of Jacksonville, Florida, where my family moved into the day before lockdown began. So literally, we, all these technical challenges, even though we're really technical people, I guess you could say, are an adventure because we have to be cautious about, who we're inviting in and how this is all working and getting some of these things ironed out. So we're completely new to Florida, to the area, to everything about it, and to a brand new community where they're building houses really right next door. So
where are you?
Big adventure.
It sounds like a great adventure. Where are you originally from, Marcia?
I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. Actually,
oh my God,
I did. My mom went to WashU, so I think that's also. I know that's we were just there. I was actually with my son in St. Louis prior to this leg of our adventure. So yeah,
how did we
lots
connect?
of friends there.
How did we connect?
I have no idea.
Oh my God.
Fate. I like to say just fate. That is the answer.
Fate. I love that. Oh yes, That is crazy. I went to WashU too. That's insane. And I was there not too long ago too. That's how Diana Ford, who is on this with us, she is in St. Louis. She has this amazing it's a resale store, but it's like a super high-end resale store. And there used to be on Bravo a reality show of her shop and her family, and it's pretty significant. I got these awesome boots there that are like $600 boots, but I got them for $125, and I felt like I had discovered the world.
Then this is probably why we're meant to know each other. So just forget the old saving the world kind of stuff. This is the real stuff. This is the important. So
I love it.
Appreciate that.
Did you guys come straight from St. Louis to Florida?
No, actually, we came. Well, the story is way longer than I'm able or willing to go into. But we came here actually from Austin, Texas. Wonderful. And we just had some challenges right when we got here, and so my son and I ended up going to St. Louis for a while, where my mom lives, and I had a place we could stay for a while. We were actually maybe the shorter version is soon after we landed in the Jacksonville area, we had a hurricane and we all had to be evacuated. And so we were in temporary housing at the time. We didn't have a place to stay or any
Are
of
you
those
kidding
things.
me?
So no, it was just sort of like
A lot of
it
crazy do.
seemed a lot of crazy. Anyway,
So, how big is your family? How many people are in your family that you
uh,
are like? You guys have moved to Florida.
four of us. So my husband, my 15-year-old son, and my 84-year-old mother-in-law moved here. And
Wow.
so yeah. Anyway, but in our house these days, my mother-in-law is actually living, having somebody else taking care of her at a assisted living facility, an
Awesome.
independent living
Yeah,
facility in
that's
the
awesome.
area. But it's the three of us here at home,
Well,
hunker down with one another. So
I told people on the earlier one when I was trying to introduce you, I was like, she just told me she just moved into a new community that's in the woods, which sounds kind of fabulous, to be honest.
yeah.
I love it. So now,
It will be fabulous when we actually can get out and about and around. And don't get me wrong, I am
I get it.
perfectly comfortable living
Yeah.
and hanging out at home, but there's probably a lot here that we haven't even experienced yet. So we'll see.
100%, like everybody. I totally get it.
Yeah.
So, Marcia, what my belief is that we connect as we share who we are and we share our stories, because invariably there will be people who will hear you and they will be connected and feel a sense of like, oh my God, that happened in my life. And it only makes the world a better place when we can see ourselves in each other and we feel more connected to each other. I think we get really broken and we interact in a fractured space when we don't feel connected to each other. So that is my intention of meeting you today.
Great.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got into it? I think it's important that you tell because it's so
Wow.
unique.
All right. Sure. Uh,
And you do not have to take a short way to the answer. You can
oh,
take
okay.
us
Well then, heck.
all down the path. We want to hear
Mm, wow. So many tributaries to go down. I will have to figure out where
it.
to
I love that
focus.
word, tributaries. Go on.
Um, Well, maybe we'll just start off with I am a hyper person. I
Okay.
have more energy than the next 30 people you will meet.
Right.
And I have always tried to find ways to use that energy in good and healthy ways. That's not to say that it is the case, but that's
Yeah.
at least what my aspiration is.
I love
And
it.
just like when I was a kid, every single day after school was scheduled with some other extracurricular activity or just doing something.
Mm-hmm.
People look back and say, why did your parents do that? They must have been pushy or, making you do that. And that wasn't the case at all. That was all on me. That I love doing something every day. I remember my mother, in fact, saying very specifically, you need a day to go to the dentist or do something else. This isn't okay. But that's how I have always lived. And that is how, to this day, I always live. So I point that out because that's a key component to the story, of the river I've floated down all these years. And why one of the things that I really am appreciating during this time of quiet solitude, of looking inside and figuring out how to use some of that energy in healthful ways for myself and my family without it
Right.
having to always be seemingly busy work, because it's rarely feels that way. So with that energy in mind, I've been the sort of person who has always, gotten up in the morning, jump out of bed, don't drink coffee ever,
I don't
and
either.
just,
I don't
oh
either.
yeah,
It
yeah,
gives me the like
yeah.
it makes me feel like my heart's beating out of my chest, like I'm very caffeine sensitive.
It puts me to sleep.
Does it really?
Actually, yeah, it does. It calms yeah, in a bad way. I mean, it does all those jittery things, and it's so overwhelming to my system, so I
I've
don't
had
do it.
one person tell me that. That's amazing. Go on.
Yeah. So, uh, when it was sort of, I lived all over the world during my college years, because if I was going to do college, I might as well see the world along the way.
Where did we go?
I lived in Europe for a while. I lived in a grass hut in Kenya for a while. Um, I,
You
yeah,
you are
true,
just an
true.
edgy. Keep going, girl. Onion. Go
Uh,
ahead, onion.
You're right, exactly. Well,
Uh-huh.
no, so oddly enough, that was my nickname in sixth and seventh grade was Onion. That's hilarious that you should say that. I didn't think it is very complimentary at the
It
time,
is just layers,
but
girl,
exactly
layers.
that's how I view it. Now I
Yeah.
can see the nuance,
Yeah.
then when you get to the center, you cry a little bit, and
A
so
little
or a
bit,
lot.
maybe. But that's the thing about an onion. It's hard to get to that center. There's just so many
Exactly.
layers.
Yeah. So anyway, without going through too many hills and valleys, we can come back to those. Is that I have always sought out what made me feel alive,
Ooh.
of things that were truly using all of my energy. And so a friend of mine wrote his college thesis, his PhD thesis actually on feel, of what is that feel you have inside of you when you just feel like anything is possible and you know you're in your groove. Some
Hmm.
people have called it flow. Some people have called it a groove. His is a little bit more nuanced than that. It's a little different than that. But what is that feel that makes you feel just fully alive? And candidly, mine is hair on fire.
Ooh.
I have this,
Explain that.
the crazy bright red hair, and I'd say I've always had it that way. But I love feeling like the world is burning around. Don't get me wrong, that did not come out right. I don't love the world burning around me, but when there are crises in and around us, I'm the sort of person who actually is
You
very calm
thrive.
and
You thrive
very
in crises.
centered and
Hmm.
can walk in. So I was a trained EMT. I was a whitewater kayaker. When
Ooh.
when there's some horrible thing that goes on, I feel very comfortable just walking in, helping sort it out, moving other folks away because they're freaking out and not
Yeah.
helping the situation. And so I have always sought out opportunities to do that sort of work. Now, I have always viewed that as a positive thing. I'm not
I
going to
do
say the
too.
people
I think it's a
around
tremendous
me.
thing.
Yeah, I'm
No,
not
we
saying the
need
people
people like
around me.
you.
I think so. I mean, I've always looking for other people like me in that sort of way.
Absolutely.
And so to short chain, no, to sort of cut to the chase of how I ended up doing this fixer work, the work of walking into organizations in many cases that were not so much broken as much as really not gaining their footing, not knowing what to do next, not knowing how to get out of this crazy situation they had found themselves in many cases, not knowing how they got into it in the first place.
Sure.
Uh, but using the skills I had acquired over the course of my career, by doing this over and over and over again in each of the jobs I was in and getting different sorts of responsibilities because people could say, oh, I was somebody who could do that and other people couldn't.
And also having different fires.
And
Different
different
types
sorts
of
of
fires,
fires.
right?
Yeah,
I
it
call it
really,
in my life, I call it those slumdog millionaire moments. Like in that moment when he is
absolutely.
there on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and he's being asked these questions. I love how they unpack and show when that piece of information came to be a part of his ethos, a part of his being, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what you're explaining. You're saying like, oh my gosh, Shay, I was doing this. I knew I was drawn to things that were set your hair on fire, those things that were traumatic and required like exigent response. I was called to those things. So here you're called to those things. You do it here, you gain a certain set of skills and talents and experiences. You do it over here, and each one, all of a sudden, you find yourself now doing this corporate work that you're doing, but it's your slumdog million. You're pulling from all those moments, right?
I love that metaphor. I have not heard it before. I absolutely know exactly what you're saying, and that's brilliant. I would do a little. My body is urging me to say do a little namaste here, but I'm holding a phone in one hand, so I don't have a second
Namaste,
hand.
sister.
So just
Namaste.
one hand.
There it is. There it is. I'm there with you. Yeah, I get it. So keep going.
So in that context, well, I'm not. They weren't even actually in all corporations. So I've done this with giant nonprofits. I've done this with
NGOs.
countries, with countries. It's been a weird situation to be pulled into, but it's always fun. It's always interesting. It's always unexpected. It's always hard as hell,
How do
and that's good.
it is really good. I just want to bring it in even more. Tell me how did tell us a story where you are called in by an NGO. You're called in by a nation. Like, what does that look like? Give us some bones and flesh to that. Can
Yeah.
you?
I'll pick my nutties
Yeah.
carefully,
Yeah.
just simply because oftentimes this has come with some non-disclosures that I have to be
Absolutely.
very, very mindful of. So it doesn't help the press or stock prices when somebody knows that they've worked with me. You know, an
Right.
organization, it becomes fairly obvious that there's been some other problem. I'll give you the example of a ruse I was pulled into once, which was um, somebody that sort of a friend of a friend, um, contacted my business manager at the time and said, could Marcia come give a presentation to this group of, I'll just say leaders
Hmm.
on social media, actually. So this was maybe probably about a little over a decade ago. And social media was really a new thing.
It was.
And it was how large organization, it's fun to sort of figure this out, the wording as I go, how organizations could be benefiting from this inside their, or how they as an entity could be benefiting from this, as
From the
opposed to
use of
viewing it
social
as,
media. Hmm.
yeah, as opposed to a time waster or, just marketing. And
Hmm.
so that was something I'd done a number of these sorts of presentations of. I feel very, very comfortable
Hmm.
speaking in front of gigantic crowds, which is another topic. And I gave the talk. I thought it seemed well. It had gone well. It seemed very one-sided to me, which I hate. That's um,
Yeah, because the
and
collaboration, the mutually, beneficial part is what is very feeding and satisfactory, right? Hmm.
yeah, just even having people, just being able to see the looks on their faces of going, the
Hmm.
horror of it. It's
Right.
something you can feed off of, or just to be able to have. It's a conversation. That's the idea.
Absolutely.
And
Not a
so
soliloquy.
right. And so in this case, I finished up and I sort of looked at the person that I sort of knew, and the head of this organization was, at in one of these chairs also, and the lights just sort of dramatically came on, and I just started being bombarded very well, maybe not in a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire way, but very much in a game show sort of way of just being peppered with questions. Have you ever done this? And have you ever done this? And have you ever, and they're giving me these just
Scenarios.
really
Hmm.
scenarios, hair raising
Hmm.
examples. Have you ever done this? Have you ever done this? And I use this particular example because the answers I had done, I had experience to be able to match with each of the dramatic situations that they were calling up. And I sort of took a pause and I said, I get the impression that the line of questioning is disaster. Like I didn't, like, is there something I should know? Or I'm like,
Right.
how?
Yeah. Like if someone
How?
keeps asking you about marital issues, you're like, okay, I
Yeah.
get that maybe you need some help there. Right.
Yeah, but like house burning down,
Right.
or yeah,
Right.
it was weird. And
Say your dog dies. Asking for a friend. Right. Scenarios.
that very much, but this was like this whole group. And so one of the people in the room said, yes, that was astute of you, whatever.
Right. Thank you for that
And
validation.
yeah, and I said, yes. Let me give you some examples. So I mean, I sort of answered sort of things, but I hadn't really directly hit it on. And I said, so I worked with a three-letter agency after 9/11. I'm trying to word carefully how I explain that. I worked with this organization that was the largest bankruptcy in the U.S. I worked with, and I just sort of rattled off these things that I had done of both, say, organizations, of nonprofits, of NGOs. I just started rattling them off, and
Are you an attorney?
no,
Okay.
no, nor do I play one on TV. And and I,
I love it.
the shock on my face right now as I'm telling you this is the same shock I felt in the moment. Like, oh shit,
Yeah.
this is what I do. Like, it had never dawned on me. That
This is
sounds
what you do.
ridiculous,
Is
but
it?
it had.
No. There's a
It had.
scientific, there's a psychology term, and I'm forgetting it right now, but it's kind of like a term. Um, how I remember learning it in college was, say there's a bowl of fruit. And every day there's a new bowl of fruit, and there's several pieces of fruit in there every day. And every day you go and you reach into that bowl of fruit and you keep coming out with an orange. At a certain point, you're able to ascertain, like, I like oranges because I keep reaching for the orange. So that's exactly what you're doing. It's like at a certain point, you realize, wait a minute, this is what I have been consistently doing. I think what makes it hard for us, if you don't mind me interrupting, is that what you do, there is not a word. There wasn't a word. The language didn't exist, but the need for it existed, right? That's kind of what I was speaking to in my commencement speech that I just felt like I need to give the class of 2020. Your path, you're creating it. And you were realizing it in the moment when you're being peppered with it, like, this is what I do. And that's the validation.
And you feel like, I mean, in this case, I felt like such an idiot being in front of this group of, you could say, world leaders, of sort of unbundling or peeling back the onion, as you said, to what I do. I mean, it was so weird. So the fact that this friend
what was
of a
their
friend,
response to it?
well, somebody obviously had figured it out before I did. And that's why I was in the room. Like, I wouldn't have been there had it not been for somebody having figured this out.
Someone saw what this woman was doing. They saw your track record.
Yeah.
So this is, pause real quick. What this is interesting for me, and I want people to have the takeaway, is you were doing, every time you were in your life, you were just doing what you were naturally inclined and called to. So you're doing it and you're doing it. And meanwhile, what you don't even realize is you are creating and carving out your path, and someone sees it from the outside. Someone sitting back on the outside, and they were able to clearly see what this woman was doing. And they're like, we need that. We don't even know what it's called, but can you get that lady here? That encourages some other person in their lives, because there are people right now, Marcia, who are having their Slumdog Millionaire moment. They just haven't entered into the arena of the talk show, of the game show yet.
Yeah. And those things happen, and you couldn't plan it, you couldn't organize it, you couldn't come up with a list of talking points. It just is. And so it feels like a really weird experience, but it's also a perfect experience. I'm quite happy that this is how it's turned out, but it is really hard to explain.
Was it scary for you
to realize that?
Yeah.
No, it was hopeful. It was like, oh, look, the universe has conspired to help me out.
For you.
And so, I appreciate that. Yeah. So in this case, your question was, how was the response? And the response was, oh, of course, we found the right person. And I worked with this organization for a good long time. And it was very, very evident very soon thereafter that as to what the problem was, and it was made very public in the world as to what the problem was. And so it was, and we worked through it, and they did what they needed to do, and it was a good thing. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's one of those things I look forward to being in the history books of, a large scale disaster that was sidestepped, and we figured it out. It's not that sort of success story, but I will always hold it near and dear to my heart as a time when everything lined up to get the right things done. So,
oh, I love that time in life where everything lined up. So, Marcia, tell me, what has been, I mean, we're talking clearly about, well, let's name it. What would you call yourself? Can you give us a word or a phrase for it?
A colleague of mine, as I was having the same conversation with her, I really benefited from not calling it anything. Like, I'm just the sort of person who just shows up and fixes your problems. Is that she described it as a blank slate systems architect, which I think is just hilarious. I still use that.
I use it in introducing you, a blank slate systems architect.
Because in large part, I really do walk into situations that I haven't any idea what I'm finding. And then you just sort of have to be aware. You have to ask questions. You have to read sort of the tea leaves of the situation and figure it out. And what that figuring it out is, I mean, it's not, hiding bodies. It's not cleaning up blood. Well, at least, I'd say in most cases.
Right.
But it's really of taking an assessment of the current situation and figuring out how to bring hope to it. How to
Ooh.
find the what's next, and who are the people that need to be part of that conversation, because oftentimes if they're not part of the conversation, some of the biggest corporate situations I've found myself in have been because the organization has so clamped down on the capacity of what employees can do that it's actually harmed the company in big ways. That it is, the employees could have gotten the organization out of this mess if they'd given them the ability to actually do something good, but they had so held down their abilities to be able to make change, or had given
Why do
them
they do
any
that?
responsibility.
Why do you think
Mostly
companies are
for
apt to do that?
protection. I mean, if you can go through the roles of having actually sat at the table in this conversation many, many, many times, they almost always can tell you, well, when this person did that stupid thing, then we created a law. I mean, that's how many
Statutes.
stoplights in the how many stoplights in the world are there because some accident had happened there and somebody petitioned to put a stoplight there, so that could never happen again. And as a result of that, it may very well be that it's great that there's a stoplight there, but it could also be that that was really a fluke, and it's not something likely to happen, and it now impacts every single one of our lives by trying to drive from here to there.
Right.
So,
and maybe now the accident's not going to happen here, but maybe it happens back here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a system. That's really the bottom line.
Wow.
And so in this case, most organization policies and procedures, I have found, there are a couple usually standard ones. This is what expense reports should be, things like that. But the vast majority of them are in response to something that they wanted to prevent from ever being able to happen again. Mm-hmm. And just like you said about the accident now being over there, what it does is it changes people's behavior in ways that they really, and it cascades in ways that they had not really considered before. So one of the first things I do in most any type of organization is actually go through the policies and procedures manual, at least bring it to the organization's awareness.
Sure.
And say, is this still needed? Would there be a healthier way that we could approach this? Yeah. Maybe it's time that we even just explain why this is there and ask our staff, our employees, the people who work with us, our partners, if there couldn't be a healthier way to approach it. And that alone we've been able to make some dramatic changes in organizations. Now, don't get me wrong, just changing the policy does not change people's behavior. In many cases, people are fearful that they're still going to be zapped for doing this, or their manager is still going to be, act in a certain way because of some policy that no longer exists. So there's a tremendous amount of helping people unlearn those behaviors based on their culture that have to be undone in order for real change to happen.
You've used some unique and feeling words that I love and adore, but I wanted to know, what has been the reception of those phrases and words that you've used in that type of world? It strikes me as the type of world that you're brought into is highly structured. A lot of egos are at play. And probably this is just me creating my narrative of what it looks like. A lot of white males in this room and in this world. And you are a female. And you've used already language like bringing hope. Honestly, Shay, at the core, what I'm doing is bringing hope to a system, hope to a situation. How do they receive that language? Now, listen, I'm asking that question because I know that the language and the way that you operate already, it is powerful and truthful and direct. But I want to know, what has been their reception hearing these words that sound a little bit more flowery and everything that they're probably accustomed to implementing on their own, right?
First, I don't do work that I show up without an invitation because things are really bad.
Right. So they need you. So that's already that where you are right there is you're up here in the situation. You're walking in with ground. Yes.
Yeah. They've already tried a whole heck of a lot of things and that hasn't worked out.
Right.
So my approach, in some cases, I have more leeway than a lot of other people do in those situations. because they know that what they've been doing isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
And they're terrified in many cases. I used to joke that, well, I'll give you another example.
Give it to me.
I used to spend a lot of, though I have been a remote worker for 2 decades, which now seems crazy, but it seems crazy to so many people, but it's always been very natural to me, is that I spent a lot of time on airplanes. And one way that people would find me, because I surely never marketed this crazy skill, is that the person sitting next to me would be looking at, the papers I was sorting through or what I was reading, and would say, "And what do you do?"
Right. I imagine.
And I would say very simply, payroll is your single largest expense in your organization. That's what you spend the most money on, is your payroll. And yet I have no doubt you treat your people like shit.
Love you. I knew I loved you.
I'm the sort of person who helps fix that, where you treat them in a way that allows you to do far better and to get a return from that huge investment of payroll. And that was it. I mean, there was no more story that I had to offer.
You got me. You had me at hello. Mm-hmm. I get it.
I'm talking about sad. So sad that this
so
happens over and over and over again in every organization. And I can look at all the crazy things that organizations have gotten themselves into, but this fundamental truth is the one that made the biggest difference.
Mm.
And so as a result, maybe a couple of weeks later, maybe a couple of years later, at some point in the future, I get a phone call. "You don't know me, but I admitted to so-and-so that I was having this problem, and they said I needed to call you." It's a weird way to get business, but it is. And that's what I did. And so to answer your question is, how can these words like hope and aspiration and, bringing down roadblocks in people's paths, how can that fly in this
transformation, resistance, change? I mean, all these things.
Yeah, right. Those came about with groups of people who were pretty darn happy with the status quo.
Right. So how, and I think the answer is, what you're saying is, the only reason why they can see someone like you is because they are desperate, and they know that they are where they are because their system is broken. They don't know what to do. They've reached their end. So it's kind of like Hail Mary.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the situation. And so that's why I don't market. If you're in a really horrible situation and you don't know where else to turn, I'm your gal. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. If your ego has been making you think that you're the bomb, but you've been seeing nothing but bombs actually in your life, call me. Like, no one's doing that. No one's gonna be like, because they have to admit a whole bunch of things before they pick up that phone. Right?
But if you get on an airplane, and this is a story I've actually heard more than once. If you get on an airplane and you are freaking out because you just got chewed a new one by your board or the press or something, and the person sitting next to you on that plane, say in the old days, looks at you and says, "Are you okay?" And you just realize you have no reason to keep this to yourself, and you just blah, 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 out what the problem is, and the person goes, "Oh, here's your gal, call her."
Right.
It's a weird situation to be in. So, and I truly have gotten, when people have said that you don't know me, but I was on an airplane and I spilled my guts that I was going to be fired next Wednesday if I didn't figure this out. And they told me to call you, and I don't know why, and I don't know who you are or what you do, but you can do it. It's just a weird situation to be in. But anyway, I want to come back around to how this is helpful, because I'm not, I look at this and I think this is the craziest job on earth. But what it allowed me to see over the years is that this is pretty much everybody's reality. This isn't just big organizations that in large part control our lives. Mm-hmm. I get phone calls now from friends, people I've known for many, many, many decades, who say, I'm losing it. This homeschooling thing is just not working for me.
Right.
And I don't know what to do. Or I've been on Zoom calls since 7 a.m. this morning, and I don't know what to do. Now, part of me, having done the homeschool thing for 15 years And having worked remotely for going on 3 decades, I want to say that there is a way to do this, and let me help you do it. But interestingly enough, what people are saying is not how to fix and how to improve their situation for the long haul. They're looking at a stopgap just for now. They're of the belief that this is just to make it work until this crazy is over.
Right. And how successful do you think that is?
Well, I'm sure in some cases it will be successful. They're going to be able to send their kids back to school, and they're going to be able to do what and not feel so awkward because they don't understand 5th grade math. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different layers
That math
of this.
is something, that Common Core. I can tell you who doesn't know how to do it. I was
You're
like,
not alone. Now's the time. You can definitely tell you are not alone. And so is that's I would say that is parallel to the organizations I have worked with before I get a phone call from them.
yes.
They've already gone through the let's fix this with a Band-Aid short term, let's just feel better about ourselves approach. And when I get pulled in, I can actually be the most useful is when we actually want to change the situation so that it is healthy and sustainable and can move forward. And that's what I haven't heard yet. I don't know. Maybe I'll be hearing I'll get those requests in June or July or September or whatever. I don't know. And maybe I'll never come in. I'll be perfectly fine with that. But this moment in time, if nothing else, has just reminded me so vividly that we're not really either ready or willing or in enough pain, which sounds so horrible. I feel so awkward of saying it that way.
Keep going. Keep saying
to be making real, useful help our society and our planet and ourselves and our family and help that make change, because these are all symptoms of far deeper sets of rules and ways that we approach ourselves and ways that we have looked at the world around us and expectations we have of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And until we start challenging those and start asking the harder questions, which is not how do we get back to the crazy, because let's be frank, it was crazy.
It was crazy and it wasn't working. And there were parts of it that were not working. Let's not forget that. There was this song when there's a singer that I didn't even really know a lot of, but she came into my world right about the time when I was given birth in 2007. Her name is Sarah Groves, and her song was called Painting Pictures of Egypt. And here are the lyrics that just were like revolutionary for me. It says, in my mind, she goes, I've been painting pictures of Egypt, leaving out what it lacks. And in my mind, I want to go back. And those lyrics just, they arrested me. Anybody who knows that Old Testament story, the Hebrews were in bondage to the Egyptians, treated horribly for over 400 years. And then they're given a way out. God provides this way out in the middle of no way. And they're in the desert. And they're within, kind of weeks, they're in the desert. And they start moaning and complaining, and so much so that they're just like, you know what? Let's just go back to Egypt. We knew when we had food, we're going to get fed breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the only way you could want to go back to Egypt is you are forgetting a whole bunch of things that weren't working.
Right.
Yeah.
And you had to be so terrified of the unknown.
That's
because so oddly enough, I look forward to finding this song.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the odd part. That's something I'm looking forward to. But I use the metaphor of the parting of the Red Sea.
Oh.
And real or metaphoric or whatever your perspective on this, it's that if you could imagine getting through most of the way through the Red Sea and you look back, and then you look forward, the question is, do you see something similar on both sides, or do you see something very, very different?
Vastly different.
And for some people, they actually see the similarities. Oh, look, I'm with the same people. Oh, look, it's still, the sun is shining.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look, there is still air.
Right.
There's water.
Right.
These are the things that we really need. And we can create the things that serve us, the buildings, the kitchens, the places to be reading with one another, to be able to spend time with each other. We can create that. And they will have some similarities, but hopefully they will be better. They will be new versions taken into account of what we need today, as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to we're created in a different sort of way. We have this knowledge. We have experience. We can create something new that will work better for us because we have the core building blocks already. And
Why
those
do you
other
think we're
things,
reticent to do that, though?
oh, well, I probably go through a whole list of reasons. I think so much of it just is the fear. What if I'm not good enough? What if I
Mm.
can't? What if I can't figure out how to do it? What if we're not the right people? What if the people who built all this are of a different, caliber than us? What if we don't look, maybe not at the friend of mine, but maybe that they were a different sort of person. Maybe they worked harder. Maybe there weren't any of these people who are slackers. I mean, you go through the whole list of reasons, but ultimately it boils down, I think, to fear.
Yeah, I
And
think fear is that big one, man. I think it impedes us all. Again, I love music, so again, there's a song by an artist. I don't know why these two are just came to mind. I haven't listened to this guy in years, Chris Rice, and he had this song, and oh gosh, I can't even remember the name of it, but this is the lyric. It says, "Why does the past always seem safer? Maybe at least because we know we made it."
that's it, right
That's it,
there.
right?
It would do my one-handed namaste again. Yes,
Namaste.
yeah.
Yes. Yes, it is. It's like, it's not, when you were living, when the past was your present and you were living it and you were unsure of the outcome, it was a very scary, uncomfortable, odd
Right.
place. But it's only on the other side where you're able to go, whew, I'm here. And so now I'm always thinking to myself, how can I approach the future that is in front of me with the same sense of solidarity in my spirit and hope in my spirit that I have when I come out alive. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's like you lived through it and now you're here. But at some point, that past was in fact your unknown future, and then it became your present, and now it's behind you. And so I'm like, well, maybe the vast majority of life is going to be like that for me. It may be difficult to encounter. It may feel uncomfortable, but I will sit in it. I will do it, and I will look back and I will have grown. Maybe. I try to have that perspective. I'm not
That's
saying I'm
so good.
100%, but I try.
And you can be inspiring of other people.
Right.
That's one of the I do hear that a lot. Well, you can do it. You're different. I'm like, well, really?
Or not.
What?
Or not.
Or not?
Right.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Is that the difference? If there is one, is that I can catalog those experiences that led me here, and
Amen.
I can rattle those off. So I often think that self-esteem comes from knowing that you can make it through when the shit hits the fan.
A to the men. And the only way that you can get that is the shit has got to hit the fan multiple times, over and over and over again, in
And
order for
look,
you
here
to
I
get
am.
there. You go. There you go. Right? It's like you can't expect the strength of the shit hitting the fan without the shit having hit the fan. It's like when I was a little girl, I would sit down. I remember watching the Olympics with my mother, and I just loved watching it. And this is before they had that every 2 years. This is when you literally had to wait 4 years. Remember?
Oh yeah.
And they didn't have like, oh, the winter are going to be this 2 years, and the summer it's going to be this. It was like all of it 4 years, and I would just be on the edge of my chair with my mom and just staying up late, and she'd let me, because it was always all over the world. And my mom would always have her little color commentations on the side, like her little color commentary. She'd say, and people have the nerve to be jealous. And then that's what my mom would say. And I would say, what? And she'd say, yeah, Everybody wants the gold. Everybody's jealous because this person is fine. Nobody's jealous about waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's jealous about not going to your birthday parties. No one's jealous because of that. You're right. The fear. No one is jealous because of the hard work, the pain of it. People are only jealous of the wonderful, brilliant flower that comes up out of the muck and mire, right? And that's what you're talking about. The shit hits the fan. People are jealous of or people are wanting to embody that which they see in you, Marcia. Like, oh yeah, of course, Marcia, you can do this. You can do anything. You don't get bent like me. You're like, because I've been in situations that have broken my back 1,000 times. That's why I'm good at it.
Yeah. Nietzsche, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
It's true. It's true.
And in that case, you want to find that place where you can say, I've been through worse.
And
you
get confidence there. You get confidence.
You get confidence there. You get that resilience. You get that, yeah, really, this is not the craziest. And don't get me wrong, in the last year of my life, I've had a few of those moments. I'm like, oh, look, we've reached a new high or a new low.
Right. Can I do it?
It still happens. I still walk into situations like, oh, new one. Or, they're always new.
And I think that's a critical part about being a human.
Yeah.
I think that we're always going to feel that, right? Because you don't know everything. I don't know everything. So I think at the point where it no longer is unique or interesting or different, or you're being challenged in some new way, I think you go on. Then you're not here anymore. You know what I mean?
So, but yeah, it's a weird, yeah. So yeah, it's a weird journey to all be on. So I want to point out another metaphor that you might find useful, which is that of a giant hill. So if you think about, most people view that sort of in the Olympics, actually, that's a lovely example. It's sort of you go up and you come down. That is, actually the most efficient route in many cases. Now, don't get me wrong, we're not talking Mount Kilimanjaro here.
No.
But
that's a big one.
but if we're ever trying to go, you're just going up and down, and just that's the way forward. I have goals. I have a plan. I'm going to go from here to there. That's of course how we reach the moon, for example. Sure. I should point out, what a ridiculous thought. That is so not how they reach the moon, and not how we get to the other side. But the point being is that it's so much more interesting if you go around.
Yeah. Oh, I like it.
You get to see cool flowers. You probably meet other travelers. You get experiences.
Not be the direct route, but it's the most interesting and multi-layered route.
And I would say, in large part, it is the most efficient.
Ooh,
in reality.
Why? Tell me why.
Because you're gaining confidence in yourself. You're meeting other people. Your brain is not being flooded with cortisol. That's the stress hormone, because it's trying to buffer itself. In many ways, you can take time to be able to focus on what matters in the moment at any given time. That to me is really our only hope. That I would say that is, for the people who have called me during this time, the advice. I try not to give advice. The counsel, the warm, distant hug I can offer is to say, you need to be here now. You need to look at the situation. You need to be attending to what's really going on, and not being obsessed with getting over the friggin' hill. Because if you do, you've missed where you are. This is the only time you're ever going to be here to be able to pay attention to this. There are things that the world is trying to teach you right now. You have to pay attention to them. And if you're always focused on getting over that hill, you're feeling like you're missing out. You're thinking about what you don't have. I heard a great quote. I'm not gonna do the quote justice, but the woman who has been in space for almost the last 2 years, who pointed out that what she did was not be constantly thinking about when she's getting back to Earth, but she spent her last time of thinking about what she's going to really miss. about this time that she was in space without any other people. I mean, this is the ultimate quarantine experience. And I'm going to miss that view in her case, or I'm going to miss how that air feels in my lungs, or I'm going to miss this feeling of weightlessness. Obviously, those are very, very different than our situation, but they allowed her to be in the moment and be present and be thinking about what there is to be human here and be human now. And
What are you learning here and now?
well, the hardest, by far the hardest lesson for me is that there is no stopwatch on my life.
Ooh,
I'm just
unpack that.
going back to this whole thing that I've been busy my whole life, and I have this extra hyper attention, is that I always feel like there are so many things I should be doing, and I can get them done. I'm somewhat obsessed by getting things completed. Like the sooner they can be done, like I can start stuff up, but I really it eats at me until it is done. Is that there is nobody sitting there saying you need to get this done right now, and my family, on the moments that they do point out that I should have gotten this done already, they never say it that way, but there's the have you already, that does happen, and I'm much better prepared for that when I'm not doing it to myself too.
Ooh, that's right. So now when they say you don't feel like you need to kick somebody in the throat,
Exactly.
right?
And
So
every
you're
day.
not doing it to yourself. Oh, that's because it's so deriding at that point. It's deriding. Yeah.
And it happens, and every day I'm getting better at it, a little bit better. Some days I'm better than other days, but each day I have a sense as to these are all the things that in my old life or my old world, this is a reasonable amount, a load of work I could have done. Now, if that's accurate or not is irrelevant, really, right?
Right.
Because in the morning, you're just thinking, I should be able to get this amount, of stuff done, or I should be
Yeah.
able to, and I just stopped and I thought, okay, what's one thing that I can get through? And if I don't, I worked with an organization for a while, which I'll sure remain nameless, that one of the people I worked with said, in most people's world, when it's a deadline, no one dies. But in our world, when it's a deadline, someone there's inevitably is going to die.
Oh,
And I just, it hurts even to think
right.
about that. But
Right.
to realize that the word deadline is such a horrible word choice of phrases,
Right.
even,
It's
is
not a
that there
deadline.
aren't deadlines on these. There aren't even end posts. There's some imaginary line in the sand that allows us to feel like we have gotten them complete
We
in
got
many
some things
cases.
accomplished here.
Gotten some things accomplished. We can feel good about
Right.
ourselves. And so in that world, let's I'm not going to say step back and don't get things accomplished. I'm not trying to do that at all. What I'm attending to in my own life is to doing what I am called to do now, here, in this moment in time. And I'm not going to say I'm not capable of just focusing on that. I have a couple other things spinning at all times, a couple other plates
Mm-hmm.
in the air.
Fire,
But
fire, fire on, hair on fire.
oh yeah, don't even get me started on the when I see fire. That's a whole another wacky doodle thing. But thankfully, there haven't been a lot of those, so I haven't just rushed towards those. But I can attend to what it is time for now. And I ask myself the question of myself all the time: what is it time for? And I try to attend there. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not pulled away, or by myself or others, or a phone call, or my mom's keyboard not working on her computer.
Mm-hmm.
These are the
Right.
realities of being available.
Yes.
It's the opportunity to attend and to be present and to focus and to figure it out now, because I know that this is not new shit. This
Yeah.
is, I can get through this one too,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to hurt, and it's going to be painful, and it's going to be sad, and it's going to be aggravating, and
Yeah.
it's going to be scary, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to be exhilarating, and it's going to be really unexpected. Um,
I have
we
a
have to be here. We have to be here
No,
now.
I get it. Like I see this person who maybe you know them. He says, but we do live in a world of negotiating commitments, which entails what, by when, by whom to build trust. Yeah. And I get
Uh,
that. So there's a balance. But what I think you're going to is understanding that the overarching thing is not a system of control. It's a system of being where you are right now and doing what is required of you in this moment. Yeah. And that's a real clarifying thing. It helps me not to feel the panic, the attack, that comes over you with all of the things that are seemingly required of you. My mom told me one time, and she was a really, she's still alive, but her life has changed because of other things. That's just a long story, but we can get into another time too. She was a real, an amazing businesswoman in the Bahamas years ago when she first came there. And she just really, she would consider herself a workaholic. Like she worked, she was do it and push through. And, she's also a woman who was, orphaned as a little girl. Her mother died when she was 1. Her father died when she was 5. They were raised by aunts and uncles, and there was 4 of them left. So 2 of them had to go over here because nobody wanted to feed 4 children. And which I totally get. But the point is it gave her a different experience, and her particular constitution wasn't the constitution to bend and to be soft. Her particular constitution was, the world is mine, I'm attacking it, I'm going after it. And so and it's pretty amazing. But she speaks of a time when she realized, and I think it's when she had her own kind of spiritual awakening, is when she recognized that if she were to die, the world would keep moving. And I remember her telling me that as a little girl, and I thought it was probably, I didn't have this word, but it's probably kind of macabre. I certainly didn't want to think of my mother dying, but what she was processing is understanding like these deadlines per se, these things that must, not to say you don't have responsibilities and things that, but do the best that you can and what is required of you in this now, right now. Because if you try to behave in this kind of controlling way, that all of this is you and you got to do all this, when she analyzed it, she realized if she were to die, the world would keep moving. Somebody else would have her company, blah, 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 blah. And that was a real kind of awakening for her.
Good. Yeah. I'm so I'll say lucky, I guess you could say, of you to have learned that lesson at a young age. Yeah. I had a similar, I used to lead hour bound type programs, and the woman who is, I've never been a butcher, but short of that, I've done about every job on earth.
I love you. I do. I'm like, oh, I like Marcia.
Yeah. So in this case, the woman who was my mentor through this program, she encouraged me to have, and I don't think this was her phrase, this has to have been mine, but I wish I could blame it or credit somebody else with it, is that it was the bread truck theory, which was that at any given moment, if you create a world where everything is dependent upon you, if you got hit by a bread truck, it's not going anywhere. That it ends right there. And she really encouraged me to have this thought that you need to be figuring out how other people can carry on, either if they want to or they don't want to. That's their choice. But you can't. I mean, as a young manager, I remember the number of people I worked with who they wanted everything to be their own, so they were indispensable. And I'm like, I wanted the absolute opposite. The only chance I was ever going to be promoted is if somebody else could take over my job.
Right.
Going back to the earlier conversation about somebody having a great resale shop. I'm a lover of great resale shops, and I have been trying to move along in my life and my family's life a ton of stuff. I mean, beyond anybody that they can imagine. I've completely emptied 6 homes in the last 5 years. Just crazy situations that I've been pulled into because I'm that sort of person. And I have all this stuff in my new house and in my office of stuff that I want to move along. And I'll give away huge amounts of it, but I wanted to find the person who really wants it and needs it the most in the world. So it's a slightly different, way of looking at it. I'm a little obsessed with this finding things the right place in the world. But I say that because if something were to happen to me, I don't want anybody else to have to move it along.
Right.
It sounds ridiculous.
No,
I
I get
wonder,
it.
why am I so obsessed with this? I'm like, I don't want it to just be, I don't want it to go to a landfill. I don't. If I found a really fantastic resale shop in my area or a thrift
It's going
shop,
to shut
I would.
down. This is going to shut us down in about 45 seconds, but I'm going to come right back. Okay.
All
Because I
right.
do
Yeah.
want to add, I want to end on 3 questions I did have for you.
All
No.
righty.
So
Sounds
you
great.
just don't want them. Okay. I'm coming right back. I'm just going to end it and come right back to you.